of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning. I'm Chris Boserman, Delaware County Engineer. I have the privilege of chairing our Transportation Improvement District Board. To my right is our Vice Chair, Tracy Davies, who's our County Administrator. Cy Keeley, who is our Secretary Treasurer, is absent today. And to my left in the peanut gallery is Tom Price and Pat Blaney, members of our TID board and friends of all things transportation in our county. So thank you, all of you, for being here. Also in our audience today is County Commissioner Gary Merrill. Gary, thank you for being here, and thanks for all you do to support the work that this board does. With that, I'll ask, is there any public comment this morning? No one registered for public comment. We have the minutes from the June 14th meeting were distributed earlier this week, and if you've had a chance to review those, I'd entertain a motion to approve or open to any amendments that need to be made.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Now, are there reports from any of the board members?
Not at this time.
I would only say, Chris, I thought this was a great article here in the Gazette, above the fold, no less. It was in July. I've missed a couple meetings, sorry. But very well written. I thought, said a lot of things of what we're doing and trying to do.
Thanks for pointing that out. We'll always take that kind of publicity, right? Yeah. Most of what I have to report is will be covered further in our meeting, and there's a lot that's happened in the southeastern corner of Delaware County and across the line into Licking County, and with the Intel project, and so a lot of what we need to talk about today are really just updates and sharing of information of things that have occurred there. So I'll defer any of my comments until that time on the agenda. Item 5 is our Secretary Treasurer's report, and as I mentioned, Cy is not able to be with us this morning, but he shared with me that the current cash balance for our TID is $2,221,093.67, and we did receive a clean audit on our 2022 financial statements. And of course, we have an independent auditor that we hire, and then we received notice that the state auditor basically accepted the findings of that independent auditor and concurred with that audit. So, so that's all good news. Any questions about the financial report? Hearing none, I'll move to staff report, and I'll ask Chief Deputy Engineer Rob Riley to take us through the status of several projects that we're working on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bosman. Good morning. I'd like to start with the big news. As some of you may be already aware, there was an announcement several weeks ago about the Silicon Heartland regional projects and the effort that has been ongoing for about a year now, close to a year, involving Delaware, Licking, Franklin counties and ODOT. Basically looking at the Intel project and the effects that will have on in particular, the local road network in our area, as well as the state highway network. After a good deal of work and collaboration by all parties, ODOT and the governor's office made an announcement several weeks ago where the state will be assisting local agencies, including Franklin, Licking, and Delaware counties, with some projects that were identified. We are the fortunate recipient of several of those projects. The funding is described in more detail in the report, but I'll summarize by saying ODOT is providing right around, let's see, $11 million, 10 or $11 million towards 3 projects on County Line Road, Licking Delaware County Line Road. So we are working closely with ODOT to develop those projects. Actually, 2 of those projects we have moved ahead, and we're trying to move ahead very quickly on projects number 4 and 8 on your map. Those are 2 intersections that we identified through a safety study as would be beneficial to have roundabouts at those locations. Both Center Village Road, which is kind of a major corridor, or will become a major corridor, I should say, through that part of the county, as well as Fancher Road, which sort of already is and will become more so. We'll see some pretty dramatic traffic increases after Intel opens. So, long story short, we'll be working through that over the coming months and couple of years. The grant funds that ODOT will be providing will be dispersed to the TID, and so I do expect, probably not next month, because I think we can cancel next month's meeting, but in October, to have a grant agreement for your consideration, to basically accept those grant funds, and then with all the details of advancing the projects. So I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions on this. You can, again, happy to answer any questions on the map. There's 14 projects that ODOT is funding through this program. We have several of those. If not, I'll move on.
Rob, could I
Sure.
just add one of the things I think that's significant about these projects? It's kind of a nuance. Some of the consultants in the room will appreciate this, but initially there was discussion of funding these projects using federal safety funds, and so federalizing those projects is a much more complicated thing than when we spend local money. And so the ODOT has also agreed not just to fund these, but to fund them through state funds with through the TIDs in a way that will help streamline and make those projects move faster. And so seems like a nuance, but it's really a pretty big deal in terms of how easily or how quickly those projects can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Brosman. That's an important note. I'll just add on to that. We will be under somewhat of a deadline. I wouldn't say it tight, but it's a fairly quick deadline to have the projects complete and all grant funds dispersed by the end of 2026. That is much more feasible with non-federal funds. There will be less red tape, so to speak, to go through to get these projects advanced. So we do think that's very doable, and we'll be working towards that. I'll move on. Yes.
Do you see most of that being in the reduction in environmental requirements?
Yes. Yes. Move on to the next project. As you know, we've been working for some time now on the 713637 interchange project. The right-of-way plans are nearly finalized. They've been through the first round of review, and some minor changes are being made, and those will be resubmitted shortly for approval, and that would enable Delaware County to work with ODOT to start acquiring properties probably as soon as this fall. There's several properties that will be needed, portions of properties I should say, that will be needed for Phase A. As it stands now, I think there's a realistic chance we could start construction late 2025, but it will take probably a year and a half or so to get the project complete. So I did want to give an update on the RAISE grant that was submitted back earlier this year. As you may recall, we submitted a grant. The RAISE is a administered directly through Federal Highway Administration, US DOT, excuse me, not through the state. So it's a direct grant opportunity. Unfortunately, we were not successful in getting that grant. We had applied for $8.7 million, and I was notified a few weeks ago that we were not. So we will keep plugging away. I don't think that's necessarily a deal killer. We will find a way to work with ODOT to close that funding gap. What that grant would have done is freed up some funds for future phases. Some of the funds I think we'll be putting in from the local level. We had hoped to preserve some of that funding for future phases, but we'll make it work. We're working with ODOT closely on that. Moving on to Holman Sawmill, very quick update. Work is essentially done at the intersection. We're just waiting on a couple of pedestrian traffic signal poles to be installed and the final invoice to be submitted, at which time I'll bring you a certificate of completion, and then we can handle the project and accounting and so forth. Number 4, the County Line Tippett Road realignment. That was one of the projects that was funded through ODOT. That's project number 9 on your map. So in essence, what has happened is the TID funds were essentially it is not being funded through the TID ODOT program, rather it's through this special Silicon Heartland program. I've been working closely with Bill Lozier at the Licking County TID, and that project will be we'll be working with them to advance that through the study and preliminary engineering phase. But I do expect Licking County will be taking the lead on that, since we've got some of the other projects that we'll be taking the lead on. So more to come on that, but I think that's, as we probably talked about last time, that's a pretty important project for Delaware County to try to get really a better corridor down to State Route 161, which of course is a major commuting and freight highway. Last but not least, Bale Canyon Road improvements. If you've been in that area, the road is closed, or has been closed for several weeks. Richland Construction is hard at work getting that road rebuilt. As it stands now, we may get a little over half the project done by the end of this year. There's some work under the 71 bridge that will may spill in to next year, but for the most part, we'll get most of the difficult work done this year. And as you recall, we were providing a $500,000 funding assistance to Orange Township for that project, which will pay out next year. So with that, I believe that's all my project updates. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. We've kind of combined the staff report with the discussion of the Intel-related projects, but I think it's important for us to point out that the Silicon Heartland regional projects that are highlighted on this map are not the extent of projects that need to be done in that area. These are just simply the ones that are fortunate enough to have received state funding. We still have to upgrade Center Village Road, we have to upgrade Fancher Road, and as Rob mentioned, the traffic study that was done in the 20-minute drive time ring around the Intel site showed really dramatic traffic volume increases on a number of our roads, and so but it's not realistic for us to expect to have every one of the projects that need to be done funded through the state. So we're going to have to take some of those on as locally funded projects. So just wanted to make sure that this map doesn't get misinterpreted as these are all the improvements that are needed in Delaware County to meet the demand of Intel. That's not the case, and you'll be hearing more about those other projects as we advance those.
Have you set a priority on those other projects yet?
I don't think we have officially. I think Center Village and Fancher both
Okay.
are higher priorities just based on how they're being used. In Fancher's case, the volumes that are there today,
Yeah.
and in the case of Center Village, how much of a direct shot it is basically into the northern entrance of Intel. If you haven't driven that, just Intel or Center Village to, is it Duncan Plains, to Mink Road is, you know, it's a
Takes you right there.
3 or 4 minute drive, and
Yeah.
you're at Intel. So a lot of changes to come, but we have not. Our focus, priority-wise, will be on these projects that you see. One, because there's funding, and two, because there's a deadline with that funding. Any other questions about any of that? I'd close that discussion by just thanking Governor DeWine for stepping up and doing what he said he was going to do. When a lot of us voiced concerns about the local impacts of this huge economic development project, you know, the word back through the director's office was that they were going to come through with more funding for locals, and so they made that announcement 2 weeks ago. And though we would have probably liked to have seen more projects in Delaware County on this list, this really is one of those cases where we need to look at this regionally, and any of the improvements that get made around that area benefit all of us, and make this a much more viable economic development project for the region. So in a unique way, I'm happy for Licking County, I'm happy for Franklin County for the projects that they got, because it really is one of these rising tide lifts all ships situation. And so we got to put our regional hats on in terms of how we look at these projects. So thanks again to the governor, and big changes ahead. Moving on to item 8, does anybody have any thoughts or an objection to us canceling our September meeting? Hearing none, we'll just do that. We don't need a resolution, do we, Sarah?
No.
Okay. Is there other business any of you'd like to bring before us?
With everything that's going on, and of course I've missed a couple of meetings, staff-wise, are you comfortable with the way that TID, has staffed? Because we talked a year or two ago, eventually we're going to be up to our necks, or you are, and
I think it's probably more of a question whether the engineer's office is staffed up,
Yes.
because we provide that engineering and staff support to the TID. There are TIDs that have staff. I don't think we're there yet, and but Rob and the other engineers in our office are busy and spread pretty thin, and we've talked internally about the need to expand our staff, and that's an ongoing discussion that we have. It's also not an easy market to find the right people. So, but we'll find a way, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a very valid concern. Anything else?
I just wanted to follow up on a conversation we had last time we met about what we might potentially fund in the future, types of projects. And I know we talked about potentially some other township projects, some other different ideas, and didn't know if there had been any further discussion on that.
At least from my end, I would say there are a couple potential projects out there.
Okay.
The county is in discussion with Berlin and Orange Township about making some improvements to Shanahan Road, which there may be a place for the TID to assist with that. Of course, the Berlin Business Park, that's an ongoing effort by Berlin and Delaware County to develop that area with good uses that will really generate a good rate of return with commercial and industrial uses. So there's certainly an opportunity. So a lot of that is kind of in flux right now, but I would say certainly within the next few months, there's a very high likelihood we may be called upon, or there may be a need to have that discussion about funding some of those projects. So as we sit here today, I'm not sure I can point to any specific amounts, but I know there's some good candidates out there.
Thanks, that's great.
One of the others is not a township project, but ODOT, we should back up. We took the, I think, kind of extraordinary step to initiate and take on the engineering for the 3671 interchange modification. And, none of those routes are state routes. Yeah, here we are designing a improvement to a U.S. highway and an interstate highway, but we understand that's for the good of our county and our community. So phase one of that, our TID holds the contract for the design of that. ODOT, I can't blame them for this, but would like to see us continue that commitment on phases B and C, and so that'll be an ongoing discussion we'll need to have here. And I'm not ready to commit to that yet, but or suggest to you that we commit to that. But that's another one of those discussions that we need to have. And not everything is related to Intel, but it seems like that it always comes up in relation to everything anymore. But that 3671 interchange and the connectivity there is a really important link when you look at the regional connectivity and Intel traffic coming from the north or headed away to the north. So
Absolutely.
there'll be more ongoing discussions about what our role is as that project moves forward. Any other business? Hearing no objection to item number 10, I'll declare us adjourned, and I'll see you all in October, if not sooner.